Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a video concept that I recently saw on It's Just Steph's YouTube channel. I think I have done this one in the past, but I just got reminded of it and I thought it's time to do another one because I have been changing up my collection quite a lot recently. So I just wanted to go through my palettes again and let you know what eyeshadow I would keep from each brand if I could just keep one palette per brand. So I'm going to go through my palettes and I'm going to go through each brand, and every brand that I own at least 2 palettes from, I will pick a palette, and then I will have actually put all of my miscellaneous kind of palettes, so the ones that I only own 1 palette from, into like their own category, and I will pick one of them as well. So I will start with Anastasia because it's top of my pile, but before I jump into the video, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So, like I said, first up we have Anastasia, and currently in my collection I have 7 Anastasia palettes. I have the Soft Glam, the Norvina, the Sultry, the Subculture, Jackie Aina, Cardi Bible, and Americi. So out of those 7, if I can only pick one palette to keep, I decided to go with my Norvina palette, which looks like this. I love this palette. As you can see, it has a lot of pans, a lot of views, and I think it's a beautiful palette. This is definitely one that I would keep. I just love how intense the shimmers are. I love the color story. I love the combination of these like slightly warmer toned with the kind of more pink and purples. And even so, the pink and purples are not too cool toned, apart from Soul. That's quite a cool tone shade. But I just love this palette. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a stunning take on a neutral palette. So this is the one I would keep if I could only keep one. The next brand that I have is Colourpop, and I used to have way more Colourpop palettes than I do now, but I have slowly decluttered more and more. So currently I have Going Coconuts, Aha Honey, The Child, Through My Eyes, Sweet Talk, and At Forest Sight. So out of those palettes from Colourpop, the one I would keep, I think is quite obvious, but that would be the Star Wars Mandalorian, the Child palette. I love this palette, and again, it has a lot of pans. You can see it's quite well loved. I had this one in my product level up this year, and I had pan on all of the remaining shades, apart from this one, the lone standing shade in the corner that hasn't had pan. But yeah, this one is the one I would for sure keep if I can only keep one. I think all my Colourpop palettes are on the verge of like being decluttered at some point, because I don't feel like the formula kind of ages very well, and also the formula is not my favorite anymore. But this palette here is, and I love this so much, and I don't think I will ever get rid of this one. I mean, at some point I probably will have to, but I love this palette so much, and this would be for sure the palette I would keep. Next up we have Natasha Nona, and I have a lot of Natasha Nona palettes now. It has grown a lot recently because I got a lot of palettes from my friend Martina. But currently I have Metropolis, Gold, Sunrise, Love, Bronze, Biba, Sendo, and then for the mini palettes I have Mini Retro, Mini Gold, and Mini Biba. Those are all my palettes, and I think, you know, I was initially going to say this was quite an obvious choice, but it was kind of an obvious choice, but also at the same time, there was one palette that was really close to this one that I almost picked, but I think I will have to pick this one. I mean, I talk about this palette all the time, how much I love it, and that is the Gold palette. I just love this palette so much. The quality in here is the best that I've tried for Natasha Nona, and it's just such a good one. I love this palette a lot, and these tones are also the tones that I love. I love these kind of warmer tones. I love the kind of greens that are in here. So this is for sure the one I was going to pick. The other contenders that I was thinking about was the Bronze palette, because I love the Bronze palette. I love every single look that I create with the Bronze palette. So that was like the main top contender apart from this one. And then I would say the other one that was kind of like I thought about was Metropolis, but it just had to be the Gold palette because this is for sure my favorite. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a shame that this one got discontinued. I don't know if it's back or not, but I think it comes and goes, but it's a shame if it is because it's such a good palette, and again, the quality in here is just outstanding. For the next brand, we have Pat McGrath, and I have, again, a few palettes from there. I have the Utopian Dream, the Bronze Seduction, Divine Rose 1, Subliminal, Divine Rose 2, and Moonlit Seduction. So I have 6 palettes from Pat McGrath. And again, it was quite hard to pick one here, actually. I had a few that I wanted to like choose between. The main 2 that I was thinking about was the Utopian Dream and the Bronze Seduction. And I had to choose the one that was my first ever Pat McGrath palette, which is the Utopian Dream. I used to love this color story, and I'm picking this one mainly for these 2 shades here because I think they are stunning. This is also a beautiful like spring tone palette, and I feel like if I could only pick one palette to keep from all my brands, I wanted some diversity. And this one has like those rosy tones, but they are more kind of warm leaning. And yeah, I feel like this will give a lot of variety. It would give a lot more like kind of colorful shades. It would have a multi-chrome in it. And yeah, I love this palette and I definitely want to get more use out of it. But this one would be the one I would choose from McGrath. So next up we have Huda Beauty, and I have 4 palettes from Huda Beauty. We have Mercury Retrograde, and then we have Rose Quartz, and those are the 2 big palettes that I own. Then for the 9 pans, we have Nude Lights Obsessions and Gold Obsessions. And out of the palettes that I have, the one I would pick is my Rose Quartz palette. I love this palette and I've spoken about that a lot as well. It's a beautiful color story. I normally don't go for these kind of more cool tone palettes, but this one is just so special. That has a lot of special eyeshadows. Like the formula in here is amazing, especially for the shimmers. And I also like the Huda Beauty mattes quite a lot. And I think picking this one I would kind of cover my bases when it comes to cool tones. I would have my cool tone palette of my dreams to play with, and like the kind of rosier tones, which I'm so into at the moment. So this would for sure be the palette I would pick for Huda Beauty. Next up we have Beauty Bay, and again I have 4 palettes from Beauty Bay. We have the Nikki Tutorials and Beauty Bay palette, the Beauty Bay Book of Magic, the Wilderness, and the Love Notes. And out of those, I don't know, there was 2 palettes that I was thinking about. There's one that I kind of would pick as my favorite, and there's also one that I would pick for the variety in there. But ultimately I decided to go with my Love Notes palette, which is the more kind of boring choice, I think. And I mean, I kind of have these bases covered, I guess, in some of the palettes, although you do get some more colorful shadows down here, like some more purple, plum, pink kind of shadows. But the other one that I was thinking about was the Wilderness palette, because the palettes that I have picked, none of them really are that colorful, so that would be the other choice that I would have. But I think ultimately I would go for this one because I just love this palette. I love the tones in here. I love how effortless you can do looks with. You can also do, like, again, some colorful purple looks or like pink and coral looks. So you do have some options, and I love this palette more. And I mean, honestly, I know the Wilderness is quite raved about, but it's just not my favorite. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just I'm not into brights at the moment, but I just don't love it as much as I used to, so this one would be the one that I would keep. Next up we have Kalos, and we have 2 palettes from Kalos. We have the Club Nebula and the Sashimi City. And out of the 2, it might be a bit surprising, but out of the 2 that I would keep would be the Sashimi City. I would actually not keep my Club Nebula, and I don't know, it's just, I love this palette a lot. It's such an easy, like, everyday palette, and currently I'm actually missing one of the shades because I'm panning it. It's this one here, but this is like a light, sparkly, kind of goldy champagne shade, but yeah, that's normally there. But this is such a beautiful color story otherwise, and it's an effortless palette you can create beautiful looks with. And this is also magnetic, so you can create single palettes with it. And I think it's just such a good palette. Like, every single shade in here has really high quality. You can create a perfect everyday look with this, and you also have quite a bit of variety, even though it's just 5 shades. So this would be the one I would keep out of my 2 Kalos palettes, if I could also keep one. So for the next brand, I also have 2 palettes, and that is Odin's Eye. I actually have brought out both of them because originally, when I was making my list, I picked the Elva palette to keep. It looks like this. I think this is a beautiful color story. I wanted this palette for so long. So this is the one that I decided to choose. However, when I was pulling all my palettes out, I realized that I have a lot of similar tone palettes. I have a lot of like rosy tone palettes. And because of that, I actually decided to go with my second palette from them, which is the Red Dragon palette. This palette is one that I always say is, like, in theory, my dream palette, but I just don't reach for it. But I feel like if I didn't have all my palettes, I would reach for this one more, because it does have those kind of more warmer tones, but like still kind of unique warm tones. And then it has like the greens that I love, and I feel like I love greens, and I feel like with especially with the child palette and then the greens in here, I would be able to create some really nice green looks, like more kind of cool tone minty looks, I guess, or like sagey looks from the child palette. And then in here, I would have like a warmer green and like this shadow right here, if I wanted to create more like of a warm green look. So I would have my options with this palette. So this is the one that I would decide to keep if I can only keep one in the end. The next brand is actually my final brand before we go into miscellaneous palettes, and that is Sydney Grace. And I have 3 Sydney Grace palettes at the moment. I have the Tiny Marvels, the California Coast, and the Mountain Trail. And, you know, the Mountain Trail will provide some nice greens. The California Coast will give like a smoky, kind of cool toned palette. But the one I would pick, I think, is a given, and that is the Tiny Marvels palette. This palette is beautiful. I absolutely love this one. I feel like, again, this would have a lot of variety. You can create some more neutral looks with this. You can create some colorful looks. Here you have another green as well. I have another purple. So I feel like I would give a lot of variety of this palette, and I think this would be a perfect one to keep if I can only keep a handful of palettes in my collection. So yeah, this is one I would go for, and I love this palette a lot. I think this is a, I hope they never discontinue this palette, to be honest. I think they don't, I don't think they will because of, you know, Mel Thompson. But yeah, I love this palette a lot, and I should have reached for it more than I do. But it's such a beautiful one, both color story and formula. The formula of City Grace is amazing, especially in this palette. So this is the one I would keep if I can only keep one. Then out of my miscellaneous palettes, we have a couple brands. We have the Charlotte Tilbury Filter palette, the BH Cosmetic Blueberry Muffin, Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse. We have the Urban Decay Stone Vibes, the Nobla Dreamy, the Viseart Paris Edit, and then lastly the Rowan 75 Degrees Quad. And if I can only keep one of those palettes, the one I would pick is actually the Paris Edit palette from Viseart. First of all, it's such a small little palette. Let's compare it to like the Beauty Bay palette. I think a lot of people have Beauty Bay palettes nowadays. Like, just look how small it is. And this one has 12 shades in it. This one has 15, I think. Is it 15 or no, wait, 20. Yeah, 20. I can't count. 20 pans and 12. But I mean, just look at the size difference. Or like, let's compare it to the Anastasia palette again. 14 pounds versus 12. Such a small one. I mean, Colourpop again, 9 versus 12. Smaller than that even. It's such a cute small palette, and I feel like because of that it would be easy to travel with. Again, the pans in here are magnetic, so they would be easy to take out and use. And also the color story is just beautiful, effortless looks. I talked about before how I like those rosy tones, so you get them in here. You also get a couple browns if you just want to create a pure kind of like everyday brown look. Like you have this transition, the deepening up shade, and then like brown shimmer here and a champagne shimmer. So this is the one I would keep. I haven't played around with it too much yet, but I am excited to do so. I'm really happy to see what the Viseart format is all about, and I feel like some of the shades in here, like some of the shimmers are more satiny, but you still get like two quite sparkly shimmers or like quite intense shimmers, which are this one here and this one here. So you do have the variety in there. So this is the one I would keep. Maybe it would be a bit redundant to some of the other palettes that I've chosen, but I just had to pick this one. This is the one that stood out the most out of the palettes I mentioned from this kind of miscellaneous category. So yeah, I would pick the Viseart palette. And with that, that was the last kind of bulk of palettes. So those are the palettes that I would keep if I could only keep one from each brand. Let me know if you have a smaller collection, or even if you have a big collection, if you wanted to do this with yours, let me know what palettes you would keep down below. And otherwise, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye guys.